Hi, welcome to Wise Beyond Bitcoin, your home for the crypto neo news, education, and opportunities. My name is Ryan.
My name is Lucas.
And we have another installment in our Wise Beyond Bitcoin macro update series, where we take a look at inflation, central bank policy, um, GDP, supply chain issues, and draw all kinds of conclusions for what's going on with the macro world and how it impacts financial markets and crypto prices. So without further ado, not financial advice, not commercial, legal, marital, any sorts of advice at all, just our opinions and research, and do your own research as well. Make your own mistakes. Right? That covers that.
Oh, that's the disclaimer. It's just educational information. Speaking of educational information, this is where we met and got our education was in studying and looking at the markets and economics, and kind of this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Where you see the traditional financial markets, which are created through legal tender laws and regulation, now coming to a crossroads or interacting this dialectic, this new technology. And CBDCs is what many people talk about, that version of crypto or blockchain as applied to the traditional centralized model. That's what it is. But this is kind of, we're going to talk about where we're at, what's going on, and what is the potential of this executive order for the population, for the world. And really, it seems like this could potentially be some really good news.
Yeah, it could go either way, right? So we're gonna definitely think about it in the optimistic way, right? Put that out there, put that in the universe, and see what happens. So let's talk about it. We've recently learned in the last week or so that Biden is going to issue an executive order any day now that's going to be relating to cryptocurrencies, and the idea is that he wants to create basically a large study group, right? He's going to instruct the Treasury, the Attorney General, the who else? The State Department, and there's others as well, and they're all going to take various angles of the cryptocurrency question and try to ask and study and try to come up with what would a comprehensive framework, regulatory framework look like. And that's the goal. So it's a fact-finding mission with the idea of creating a comprehensive framework to regulate this space. Now, one of the things that should be said is that up to this point, there's been a lot of discussion of patchwork regulations, right? So we've talked about whether or not something's a security, and whether or not it's under the heading or under the purview of the SEC, or is it a commodity, and is it something that CFTC looks at, or what are these assets? And so I believe this is an attempt, or the idea here is to kind of get past some of those definitional questions and just create something that's comprehensive for the entire space. And that's the broad strokes of it. And another part of this is that the Office of Science and Technology is also going to be taking a look and looking at issues relating to infrastructure for supporting a CBDC type of digital dollar. So that's one angle. I know the Fed recently came out with a comprehensive, or not, various, pretty comprehensive report about what it thought about CBDCs and how they would impact commercial banking and monetary policy in general. So there's a lot of talk and study regarding this issue, right? So we can expect this is probably the direction things are moving in. The other angle that's being discussed is from the side of stability, macro stability, right? What they're talking, the Financial Stability Oversight Councils, they're going to be looking at what happens to, I guess, volatility and the risk of price movements and of deflationary run on the bank sort of outcomes when you introduce cryptocurrencies. And so we also have the SEC and the CFTC and the Federal Reserve, the comptroller of the currency, and the FDIC. They're all going to be taking a look as well and reporting on various risks related to crypto. So yeah, this is going to be a large. Go ahead.
We've talked about some of the risks in crypto and the lack of oversight in certain areas. And this is a great opportunity for education, right? This isn't necessarily a bad thing. This is an opportunity for people who are involved in blockchain, involved in crypto, if you have a representative in your area, to write them, to reach out to them, and let them know the areas that oversight
Sure.
is needed. We've talked about several things on this channel. We've talked about the Pandora Papers and the Panama Papers. So if you look at areas that need oversight in the traditional market, or this would be more to stability. You look at the Financial Stability Oversight Council, the amount of fraud that's been revealed in the traditional market is larger than the whole market cap many times over of blockchain crypto. And when you look at how everything is on a public, open, decentralized ledger, and it's everything that is leveraged with collateral that can easily be liquidated versus what you see in the traditional market, it's really silly to look at it from a stability perspective, unless it's from how it can add stability. Because really, when you look at how fragile most of the modern economy is with the rates and the bonds and the markets, how we look at this blockchain technology, this worldwide ledger that anyone can be a part of, these applications being built, is actually more stable. Like Bitcoin, for example, we look at Bitcoin as is more stable
than many national currencies, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but there's one thing that should be said, right? That doesn't imply that there's not some role that these regulators could fill, right? Because we often hear about, well, like minor extracted value and the front running that happens on many decentralized exchanges, and that's minor compared to like what straight up scams and Ponzi schemes like BitConnect, or how about the hacks that happen on exchanges?
BitConnect or YouTube, many people are being preyed upon in hacks and scams. I would love to see, are these organizations that are actually aware? They've done their research. Are they aware of how many people in the United States, around the world, have lost their retirement because of a hack or a scam that's done on YouTube, like a very
or Facebook even?
Or Facebook, it has these outright BitConnects advertising, or away Ethereum, a Vitalik live interview, which everyone who's in crypto knows is fake. If you see Charles Hoskinson or Vitalik, or insert a founder of crypto giving a live talk on YouTube, and you
send me, the old thing was send Elon Musk a Bitcoin and he'll send you 3 back or something, right? Those were big scams on Twitter.
If you're new to crypto and you've just heard of airdrops, you may be thinking, "Oh, this is how that works." But that's not an airdrop.
That's not how it works. No,
that's an outright scam.
So there are areas where some oversight, maybe some education, right, could be useful. So it's not like there's not a role to play here. And I kind of think back to like the original
Bitfinex hackers. Wasn't there some big hack?
Recently, the Bitfinex couple came into the news, right? And they've had their coins seized and things. So yeah, there's definitely a role to play there.
Fake ads on Google that hit the top of the search engine for people who have MetaMask wallets or Web 3.0 wallets. What's
our unique insight though is that we've spent some time taking a look at the economics of regulation, right, and what's involved in that world. And it's not just some unmitigated benefit always, right? That we clearly see in history, there's times where, there was a trust that needed to be busted up, AT&T monopoly, or maybe, hey, there was some polluters that were dumping some sewage in the rivers or whatever, right? So there's been various examples where you could point and say, oh, look, regulation made things better. And that's pretty clear. But when you dig into the details and you look at some of the things surrounding, other kinds of regulation, it's not always clear that they're a benefit. And oftentimes what you see is that there's been some behind the scenes lobbying that on the part of the larger entities in the space they've banded together, drafted some ideal regulation that they'd like to see imposed on their industry. And then they get some market share out of it, right? They're squeezing out the competition, and they raise it's creating higher barriers of entry to compete with them. And they end up creating this little cartel world where there's only a few producers in that one space, and they can charge higher prices, and their margins are greater. And then you can get into what's called a regulatory capture, where the regulators are captured by the industry, right? And they're no longer on the side of the consumer always. It's what's best for the industry, right? So and there's a whole class of examples of this that you hear about called the bootlegger and the Baptist paradox or problem, and it's talked about in public choice economics, and it's just the idea that every regulation or many regulations will have what's called the Baptist contingent supporting it, where it's people who have a really good idea of what they want to see done, like some improvement, right? Clean up the air, or educate the kids, or feed the children, or whatever, right? Some moral do a good outcome, right? And that's why they're called Baptists, because there's a moral dimension to it. And then there's the bootleggers that they only have some kind of profit and loss calculation involved, right? They say, okay, we'd like to see this regulation because it makes money for us. That's your industry, right? Then that'd be your cynical kind of motivation. And so oftentimes these two factions will get together and push for a regulation, right? And often that's kind of the political alliance that gets these things done. It's the factions that have the moral goal, and then the factions that have a narrow profit and loss economic motivation. And they get together and they get these regulations passed, and then we often look back and say, oh wow, like how did that ever happen? In hindsight, this would have never worked. It would have always turned out bad. But yet when you look at it through this lens of interest groups and how these things work, you can see that that's a stable outcome that plays out time and time again. So this is all to say, when we're creating regulations for crypto, for a massive ecosystem of wealth and productivity and innovation and dynamism, we should be really careful that if we do go to regulate it, we make sure the regulations are sensible and laser focused, and not these sorts of regulatory captured sort of things where you get to where a few massive players squeeze the rest out because they've created some high barrier to entry, and now they're exploiting, for a lack of a better word, a market share that they had no right to.
I would agree, and it goes so far as to say also to give it time before taking any type of action or most type of decisive action, considering Biden can't possibly know that much about blockchain crypto. It's just not possible. Even the people that are writing his speeches, how much?
Well, even the smartest people at these bureaus, the Fed, how much do they know?
How much time in the last month have they been downloading wallets and staking and experimenting with DeFi versus having a memo come across, do their research, have their job? I mean, every one of these people, they're dealing with conflicts overseas. They're dealing with a whole host of issues, domestic and abroad. The reality is, in order for them to be competent at their jobs, they can't really know that much.
They got to delegate that.
They've got to delegate. And you can only delegate it so much and so much, where even those that are delegated to do it, they're just doing research too.
Yeah. And they're also likely to provide the counsel that they expect is wanted of them, right? So it's like you know that there's an answer that they're looking for, so you give them that answer. So really, how much are we really learning in that process?
And the reason for this is that you don't want to overregulate the people that are designing a loom. You don't want them to be regulated by the tailors and the sort of
right.
You or not the tailors, but
well, it's like there's this sweet spot.
The weavers to have to regulate, saying no, and if you're going to make a loom, it has to come through one of our approved bureaus.
Guild. You got to be part of the guild. Yeah, right.
It's like, well, no, we got a whole bunch of looms right now that everyone can just have. We can just start really making clothes for everybody. Like we can just start making rugs, just taking it out. And that's the idea, is that in these committees, what we really, education-wise, those who've been in blockchain, those who've been in crypto, whether your background's in economics or finance or in medical field, where you see how it can be applied to data, whatever your background is, take that knowledge and understanding of this new technology, because these are our brothers and sisters that are working in these relevant fields. They've had their, books, they've been working diligently at whatever their job is. And it's like, there's this new technology that's just emerged. We need to say, hey, right now, especially for the United States, you look at the history of of the market and people coming around the world for opportunity and being a place for innovation.
Well, you want to be competitive, right?
Invention. You want to be competitive and maintain. And you look at the dollar having had been a world reserve currency and now losing a lot of that attractiveness to countries already moving towards euros and other, reserve
other arrangements. Yeah.
So look at all this. There's a potential with not overregulation, with allowing these stable coins to provide both a way in and out or whatever.
It makes me, I'm glad you said that, because I kind of see it like a struggle, like a struggle between what's good in long term and what's good short term for the people in power.
A lot of opportunities and a lot of job when markets are recessed and depressed.
Right.
This could be a way for the U.S. people to allow for markets and production to just be like.
Well, that's the long term effect, right? Like, so if we leave this to be somewhat, like it is now, maybe add some regulations that keep the BitConnects and the Ponzi schemes and the hacks from becoming just rampant, right?
Educated, like there should be a time frame, like the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever, because it makes no sense to have politicians paid in Bitcoin while their constituents don't even know what a wallet is. Like, take time for people to learn what it is, how it works, and then like you said, show your understanding at these levels. Show that you understand by saying, boom, we got another BitConnect. Boom, we got another.
Oh, this is going to be a rug pull. Don't get that.
We undox these, or not, you dox, what is it?
Dox the hackers, yeah.
We dox these people that got caught. Like, that would be exciting to see,
Yeah. But what would not be exciting to see is to have the regulators come in on the side of traditional capital, traditional finance, and just shut this whole thing down and drive it over into the siloed investment banker Wall Street world, like where you have to register your Bitcoin as a security, even in order to trade in it, that kind of thing. That's not what we want to see.
Any crypto for that matter. I mean, we're talking about technologies that right now, a year ago, in fact, to this day, many of them are still not even talked about or recognized as having any legitimacy. And a year or two ago, Bitcoin itself was not talked about as having. And so you go from that to being a place of, oh, well, we're going to regulate what most people don't even know what they're a part of. Most people are trying to help build the first Wright brothers airplane.
It's not the final form.
This is not the final form. We're so early. These networks aren't scalable. Not even Bitcoin scalable yet. These networks, they're working on their security. These applications. It's like it's a little early.
Yeah. You don't. To put a fine point on it.
It's a seedling. Let the thing grow a little bit before you talk about should we give it nitrogen or phosphorus.
And put a fine point on it. The more we start creating rigid rules, and overly rigid formalism, we apply it to this space, it's going to stop. It's going to slow that whole evolutionary innovation process down, and we might end up losing some really cool protocol that would have been invented that'll never happen because of the cost. The barriers to entry are too high, or the limits make it where it's not even possible or legal, right? So it's all about not sacrificing some kind of long-term growth just to have short-term control and for short-term political interest too, because what this is factions, right? Politics is a battle between factions, and there's always a very large faction that comes from traditional finance that has a lot to say about what's going on in policy. And so of course their interests are to see this new upstart co-opted and made a part of Wall Street. But the problem with that is that by giving them what they want, we're sacrificing some kind of long-term benefit, because it's going to be this technology is going to be like the internet, the computers, airplanes, cars. It's going to be revolutionary. And if it's something that's corrupted and captured, it won't be able to develop in its fullest. And then it'll be something that the benefits accrue to a few when they really should be accruing to everybody.
And it's ironic is that this is a worldwide technology. So if you're in a jurisdiction that says, you know what, we're not going to allow innovation, or we're going to stifle, or we're going to prevent people from having access, if you do that, then what you end up doing is you end up, pardon me, you end up, well, preventing people.
You end up redistributing a lot of wealth and power and creating some inequality.
And here's what's ironic: in the United States, in America, where people always came for opportunity, you're now, there's other all over the world, there are people that are having access to this opportunity, and you're shutting out. You're shutting
Right.
that. Right
Yeah.
now.
Well, it's a Luddite. It definitely would be an example of neo-Ludditism.
Which is not the ethos I would think from my, but that's the idea of education, promote. We want to help promote the idea to help keep opportunities, the economy strong worldwide. And
well, I think we touched on that, our thoughts there. We do see a space, a role, beneficial role for regulatory intervention, but it needs to be targeted, and very limited and rational, right? There's a need, meet the need, but beyond that, as a means of control, or as a means of steering, innovation into one sandbox or another, and as a means of, requiring revenue from people, and that, I think all that's questionable. The long-term effects could be there could be much greater costs in terms of lost opportunities than whatever benefit short-term is accrued through that. But I'm never shocked to see, some short-term gain taking precedence over long-term benefits when you're talking about politics, because that's all about distorted incentives and people making decisions that other people pay the cost for, right? And then, so that's kind of the name of the game. So, we'll definitely keep an eye on this, because like we said, the potential for it to be beneficial, while real, it's also a potential to be a net harm. So, we need to make sure we do what Lucas said, pressure our representatives, write the congressman, and make some phone calls and talk to your friends and family, because at the end of the day, this is about innovation and future living standards. And will you have the ability to have some sort of choice and autonomy in your finances, or will you be plugged into a cartelized, captured industry where you're forced to trade with them or not at all? So yeah, it's a question of what vision do you want to see of the future. And I feel like it doesn't need to be an all or nothing sort of an argument. We don't need to say no regulation at all. We leave a pathway for sensible regulation, but also let's keep in mind that needs to be done in a limited and targeted way, and that it's not a foregone conclusion that any regulation is automatically a benefit.
Well said. Well put. I think we covered this macro update on the potential of this executive order. Where we see if it's still early, whether it's this executive order, there will be time for people to understand, learn, educate themselves and others, and respond. So let's just continue to learn and share what we learn, because in learning is earning. And there's a lot of learning and earning to do in blockchain and crypto. So I would say, where to go. We got playlists on how to get started beyond the macro outlook. We look at long-term potential of projects that are adding value utility with this technology. So of course we focus on secret network because of that premium privacy layer solution, which brings practical solutions to so much of blockchain. We've got playlists, how to get started with secret network and other members of the IBC, wallet, staking, receiving, acquiring, validating, all that good stuff. We've got crypto secrets, more than just NFTs, because we have a whole playlist dedicated to secret NFTs, right?
That's right. And we look beyond secret. We have playlists regarding other projects on the IBC, other blockchains, as well as other things outside of the IBC and DeFi more generally. So look through these playlists, check out the latest macro outlook video. We do 1 or 2 of those a week, and those have been lots of fun. Probably some of the more fun times we have on camera, talking about what we love, if that's not obvious. And so subscribe, comment, hit the notification. Until the next time.
Have a beautiful day. Namaste, y'all.
Thank you.